Welcome to Stump the Pastor. Today's question is from Cherry from Chicago, and she asks, where did the word homosexual come from? Now, our question today is actually a little bit different from most of the questions I get on Stump the Pastor because most of them have to do with a specifically religious or theological kind of question. But I chose Cherry's question because I really have found so little knowledge in the general public about the whole issue of sexuality, and because this term has caused such devastation from and in religious communities. Now, of course, people of varying sexual and gender orientations have been part of the human rainbow since the beginning of time. But we are still learning just how multifaceted those variations can be. However, the ability to recognize and welcome these variations as a healthy part of humanity is still a fairly recent phenomenon, at least in European American culture. Now, most of us are fairly well educated to the problems a dominant culture has in recognizing and affirming subcultures, whether that subculture is ethnic or economic, linguistic, racial, or hundreds of other categories that we try to use to delineate who is us and who is them. And we don't have a great track record as human beings for welcoming the stranger, no matter what category the stranger may fall into. And I find this to be most odd among people of faith. All the great religions of the world, including Christianity, call its followers to love the outcast, welcome the stranger, care for the vulnerable. So how is it that religious people can be the worst offenders? There is no theological answer to that question. But there is a sociological answer. But Cherry's question is quite specific. How did we get the word homosexual? Well, this term was applied to same-sex orientation around 1869, when the Hungarian writer Karl Maria Kirkbenny coined the term homosexual. So it's fairly recent for us, for our culture. But if you look at Native American cultures who preceded European Americans in North America, they have welcomed sexual variation and often affirmed the two-spirit nature of those whose gender or sexual orientation didn't follow the usual for generations well before that. European Americans would struggle to define or welcome non-heteronormative expressions of sexuality or gender identity. And this has often been defended as a Christian value. But let's be clear, there is nothing Christian about how religion has been used as a weapon to destroy and demean LGBTQ people. So it would take us some time. It would take the social changes that would begin in the 1920s and last through the 1960s for public consciousness to begin to consider the possibility of a non-heterosexual or gender-fluid presence. Now, most of us who identify as outside of the gender or sexual limitations prefer our own names, our own terms, rather than the clinical term homosexual. As the rainbow of human experience of gender and sexuality continues to unfold, the descriptions we use continue to multiply. Gay, lesbian, trans, genderqueer, asexual, bisexual, non-gender conforming, pansexual. I mean, these are only a few of the vast experience of being human that is so much greater than our clinical definitions. But the thing I most want to make sure each of you hears as a result of this question is this. whoever you are, however you love, whatever your life experience, God's grace created you beautiful, exactly as you are. And nobody else has the power to define you, because God defined all of us as the embodiment of love. We'll see you next time on Stump the Pastor. Thanks, Jerry. I appreciate your question. And if you have questions you would like to send in, just send them to Stump the Pastor, care of Pilgrim Church. The email address will be on your screen. See you next time.